Welcome everyone to Overcome Podcast episode 41. And continue the trend of interviewing judokas. Last time we talked with Nina that she was just about to go to the Olympics. And now we're going to talk with a former Olympic from 2008 USA Judo Team, Ryan Reeser. Ryan, thank you very much for your time today, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Right, it's funny because today I was actually reading an article that was published exactly August 14, 2009. It was posted on teamusa.org. It's an interview with you. It's called Ryan Reeser, Hungry for More. I'm not sure if you remember this article, but it was published exactly on this day in 2009.
No way. Yeah, I don't remember that, man. I think I've had too many
Too
too
many
many
articles.
too many
Yes.
chokes and throws on the head.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you said something on this article towards the is actually the last paragraph. Quote: "The closing ceremony was a little sad because it was the end of something I worked so hard for. It's kind of like a closure for everything that happened during the games. I gave me a burning desire to work hard and come back to experience all that in London." So you actually left Beijing thinking about London, right?
I did. Yeah, I had a lot of mixed emotions. Gave 28. Well, I was 28 at the time, so I guess a large portion of my life to making an Olympic team and bringing back an Olympic medal, and that was something that I struggled with. It was.
I can imagine. I can
Yeah,
imagine.
I mean, because at that time, you're number one. You've put in all this work, but another quad it's a serious commitment. Um, and my big worry was not that I didn't want to do it. I love judo and I love competing, and I didn't get that medal, so I really wanted to come back for another four. But I also wanted to make sure that I didn't take somebody else's spot that was more serious about it if I wasn't going to give it my 100%.
And you were coming from a really good phase. You won the 2007 Pan against a Brazilian, Leandro Guilherme, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
So you were in a really good momentum at that time.
Yeah, yeah, and I felt great. I did have some mental drag and some physical drag just because you put so much into it,
Hmm.
um, that I just wasn't sure if I could continue at that same pace for another 4 years. Um,
Hmm.
and then also at that time, it's your job and it's super stressful. But you do think about, hey man, I want to start a family. I want to start a career, that type of stuff. And it does play in the back of your mind as well because I love judo, but there's a life after, and
Yeah.
you also have to have be cognizant of that as well.
Now you touched a really important point, and during this Olympics, we there was a lot of discussion about that, which is the psychological aspect of the athlete, and you just mentioned a lot of stress.
Yep.
So, as a former professional athlete, what type of what level of stress you talking about? Because now you have a job, you have a career, and you also have stress. So, how do you differentiate between the athlete type of stress of the stress that you have today in your career?
It's very similar. I think it's a lot of the stress that I had was I brought on myself. I mean, there's a lot of outside stresses as well. Obviously, judo being not such a big sport, funding's always a big stressor. Family and relationships, a lot of sacrifice outside of judo, injuries, that type of stuff. But towards the end, it's a job. Every match is a must win. And
Hmm.
it doesn't lose. It's always fun, but at the same time, there's that seriousness with it as well, and consequences of not hitting your goals and not winning the matches that you need to win. And now that I'm working, I put myself in the same stress, because what I do in my career, I take a lot of passion for.
All
You
right.
know, I'm not just working to work. I have to provide for my family. I want to leave a legacy. What I do
Hmm.
now is in sales, but I do the same, man. I like to coach and help people,
Yeah.
and I take that seriously. So I put the same amount of stress, I think, on my day to day that I did in the Olympics.
Yeah, because I think it was overwhelmed, and I think right after the documentary that Michael Phelps brought up about the weight of gold and things like that, talking about depression, and people are starting to talk more and more about the psychological aspect of an athlete, and looks like you experienced that firsthand back in the day, right?
Yeah, and I think now that it's coming to light, I think back then I didn't know. It was just, hey, this is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and you deal with it or you don't, So um, there wasn't a lot of training or coaching or resources for that. So it wasn't anything that I really knew about. But now I'm starting to see and look back and said, yeah, man, I probably could have benefited from some education on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it might have made a difference in my performance. It might not have, but at least it would have been there.
But today you are way more experienced in life in many different aspects. You competed before after the Olympics. You did some other matches. What would you what do you wish you knew at that time that you know today that you think will improve your performance in the mat on the mats?
Um, I wish I would have taken a lot more negative outside of my life. I think I did a pretty good job building a team of people that I knew would help me. Um, but I still had some people around that were a little bit negative, which it does feed into you,
Yeah.
even if you say it doesn't, it's on some level it does. So I think that's would have been my bigger piece is just separate yourself from those negative people that aren't on the same path as you and don't have the same
Hmm.
mindset.
Right.
And I also wish I would have done a little bit more with mentoring. Um, I had a lot of big brothers and a lot of great coaches and that type of thing. I just don't know if I used them enough.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. As far as training, would you change anything? Did you ever felt that you were overtraining or not really? What would you change?
Probably go overseas more, which is tough because it's you have that financial,
Aspect.
obstacle there. Yes, it's hard. Every time you go overseas, it's 5 to 10 grand,
Hmm.
and you're missing school, you're missing work, and you're missing these other things that, again, they aren't necessarily on the Olympic path, but on the, other side of my life, that's it's very important as well. But there weren't enough partners here, so I just wish I would have taken more advantage of going to Japan, going to different countries, and spending some time there.
It's interesting how we are doing so well. For example, in the last Olympian wrestling and judo, we still not there yet, right?
Right.
Why you think there is this discrepancy so big between sports like wrestling and judo?
Again, I think for us in the states, USA Judo. I think they're doing a great job. I think we maybe need a little bit more planning with each athletes of our top athletes. A lot of it is still up to individuals to decide their path. Hey, do I want to go train in Japan? Do I want to, hit this training camp or that? I know, for example, when I was in Holland, band they had central training, and it was once a month. They all get together, top five, and they fight, and they all become better, even though they're competitors within their own country. It makes the whole country better. Um,
Hmm.
Again, I know the States is hard because we're a lot bigger. So it's hard to get together once a month for that. But I think as far as maybe just a little bit more planning with each individual athlete, maybe top five on how to, hey, here's how we're going to get to the next level.
Hmm.
Um, I think that would help quite a bit, and just more teamwork. I still, and we were just as bad as anybody else, but it was the OTC and it was San Jose and it was Jimmy's and it was some different places, instead of USA Judo as a whole.
Right, right. Do you also think that the fact that wrestling is growing so much and achieving such a great position is because of the investment in university and school? Well, I mean, it's something that if you start at school, you can actually get a scholarship in college, right? But we don't have that for judo.
We don't. That was something I would love to see, um, and I've thought about that for years. I'm not quite sure how we can make that happen. You know,
Hmm.
but that I think that would be huge for our sport. Obviously, I think some of the UFC and MMA connections with judo have driven some people to our sport, at least shed some light on it. But the schools, or if we can catch the kids young, and also have the grassroots and the funding and the different things to the resources to help them, then I think you're right, man. That would be huge for us.
Yeah, and I think that even the growth of BJJ also helped in some way judo, because if you notice, I'm not sure if you watched the Olympics, but there were a lot of matches that it was decided on the ground, Newaza.
Yes. Yes.
And I noticed that the Japanese team is working a lot on Newaza.
Yeah, and there's a lot more time allowed. I think it's always been there as an aspect of judo. I just don't know if they've allowed people to work that angle a lot.
Yeah, I keep because the Brazilian team did pretty well, but I've seen some matches where we lost on the ground, and I was listening to an interview from Flavio Canto. He said we should never lose on the ground. A Brazilian judoka should never lose on the ground, because I mean we have Brazilian jiu-jitsu. We should not lose on the ground.
It's true, though. That's part of my game I wish I would have paid more attention to, for sure. And that was before BJJ really became as prevalent as it is today.
When you were in preparation for the Olympics, what was really the most challenging aspect, aside from the financial aspect and the funds and everything, but from the mindset perspective, what was really the most challenging thing for you?
I think just having a good plan, knowing when to. Our trials were so late in the season compared to a lot of the other ones, so knowing when to peak, staying healthy, and even having a plan for guys that gave me trouble. And we did a pretty good job of that. I just think there was some more things I could have done a little bit better with that, for sure.
You mentioned something that I've heard many times people talking about this, which is be at your peak. I actually saw during the Olympics some folks that were world champion lost at the Olympics, and then the commentator was saying, "Well, he peaked at the world champion. Now in the Olympics, he's doing worse."
Right.
How can you actually achieve the words and then you go down the hill from that point to lose the Olympics? So, explain that.
Well, that's the beauty and the beast about judo, man. Anybody can win on any day. You definitely have your favorites who are just legends and monsters on the mat, but I've seen many guys who were supposed to lose end up pulling out a medal. So that's the crazy part. On the mat, but definitely off the mat as well. It is a lot about strategy, right? Strategics. It's being able to, man, is my weight's good? Am I healthy? Am I injury free? Am I peaking at the right time? Because if one thing is off, your day's done. And that's there's a lot of science involved, and a lot of countries are have that science down, and it shows.
Yeah, that's very. No one was expecting Teddy to lose, and was very surprised. Everyone was surprised with Teddy losing that one.
It was a crazy match, but it's hard for him. I'm sure you're expected to win. You win so many matches, and you're the king. And I mean, it's hard to be on every match, every tournament for years and years.
Yeah,
It's a tough spot to be in.
I was talking to Nick Del Popolo about this. I said, unless you are Ono, Ono, it's unbeatable. I mean, he got on the team a competition, a Wazaria against him, but it was very unique.
Yep.
But the guy is unbelievable.
Yeah, there's not a lot like him. I would have liked to put my hands on him just to. It would have been fun just to feel it,
And you are lefty, right? I saw some of your matches the other day that I was watching on YouTube. You always, at least the ones that I saw, most of them was the Kataguruma. Is your main throw, right?
It is, yeah. And mine was kind of unique because I grew up as a righty, and then I started being able to throw both sides. And then at about probably 15, 16, my dad and I. He said, "Man, you got to pick a side because you're starting to grip left and stand right, and which can be done. It just needs to be done correctly. So we looked at the competition out there and said, you know what, there's not a lot of lefties out there. Let's just switch now.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
Interesting.
so we were able to do that. So it was nice, man. I didn't come up against a lot of lefties, but when I did, it was trouble for me. So there was a kind of a double-edged sword. On a righties, I was fantastic, but I came up against Jimmy or Chuck or Jefferson and obviously Pedro, and it's hard because you don't come up against a lot of lefties. So
But were you able to switch, or once you became left, you never switch anymore?
Um, so the whole idea was primarily as a lefty, and then have some throws to the right side. Or if you really get shut down by somebody and you need to switch, then I can go to the right. But I try not to switch left and right because this is too complicated with grips and movement and different things and the fast pace to really switch your left and right stance.
Right, right, and then it probably mess up your whole strategy as well, right?
It does, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but do you think it's important to train both sides, or you rather focus on training and be good in one side?
Um, Well, you know that old adage of, the guy that's great does one kick 10,000 times or, that type of thing. I think it's great to definitely train as your side. You're a lefty. But my whole idea is I want to have 1,000 different ways to throw you, So I
Mm,
did have my one or two, like you said, the Kataguruma, Teguruma, different things, obviously, before 2008, before they switched the rules. But I also wanted to make sure that, I had a lot of different things in my pocket that I could use if needed, if you shut down those few moves. My old sensei was in Dallas, is Vince Tamura, and what I loved about his training was we had a list of throws, probably 30, 40 throws,
oh,
and we would
wow.
go over them every day, and we would learn them every day. Um,
30
I-
throws every day.
yeah, well, pretty much. And usually summertime leading up to junior nationals and different things, but every week we would focus on one, and then nationals in the summertime we would go over a list every day of different throws, and it just opened up a lot of different ways to throw my opponent, so that
Hmm.
it wasn't me pushing one throw, it was actually looking for opportunity and being able to, take advantage because I had practiced the different throws.
Yeah, and one thing that I noticed also during the Olympics, at least with Teddy, is he changed a little bit his game because I think he people were already very aware of what he used to do, and he did a lot of sumigaeshi, which
Yes.
was pretty rare. He was not doing that before.
Yes, which is nobody expected that. You're right.
Yeah.
But you have to, I think, with him because he's got a target on his back. Everybody's
Hmm.
studying him. Um, for them, that beating him is like an Olympic gold.
And now he has a big challenge. He must win in Paris because probably going to be his last Olympics.
Yep.
So the pressure is talk about stress. I think that one will be a very stressful.
I think it will, but I think he's probably re-energized. Because again, it's like everybody's looking at when's he going to lose and when's that loss going to come. So I think it probably came at a great time because now he's not invincible and he doesn't have all that pressure. It happened, whatever happened, happened. And now the slate is clean, even though he's still king, right? The slate is
Hmm.
clean. So now he can go back to work and a little pressure is off, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Although he will be competing at home, adds a
Yes.
little bit more pressure, but also helps him to energize, motivate him probably.
Yeah, you see that a lot, don't you? A lot of the home countries, even guys, not speaking of him, but even guys that haven't placed before, it's in their home country and they find that energy
Yeah,
and they make it happen.
Japan was a great example. I mean, they are great, but they did
Yes.
just amazing job at the individuals. That's for sure. Um, I asked this question when I interview Roddy, when I interview Jimmy. I'm gonna ask you as well because I think it's important to have a different perspective. To really develop and improve your judo, is more important to focus on Randori or Uchikomis?
Ooh, that's a good question. Ooh, that's a great question. I would probably say Randori, but what I will say a little bit more focused is, aside from one versus the other, is going into each practice with a plan. Because I mean, we've done thousands of rounds of Randori and thousands of Uchikomis, and a lot of times people get a little bit complacent. It's just movement, boom, 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 and they're not really focusing, or they don't have a plan on what they're trying to get out of practice, whether it is Randori or it is Uchikomis. So I think that's more important is because
Have a purpose, right? Go to a randori with a purpose to execute something.
yep, or even Uchikomi, same thing. Hey, you know what? I mean, whatever your focus is, whether it is Randori or Uchikomis, but hey, I lost to this guy last time, or hey, my last Uchimata, here's what was wrong with it. I'm gonna fix it, and here's my goal tonight is I'm gonna hit only Uchimatas in practice, and I'm gonna tell my guy, hey, I'm just gonna do Uchimatas, because if I can throw you, and I'm gonna try to throw you,
That's
then
a
it's
good deal, yeah. Because
yeah.
if you know it's coming, you're still unable to prevent, and then it's a good execution.
Yep, and it focuses your brain, but also writing it down. I mean, just having I think that's with anything in life, not only judo, but even now I use it every day in work. I don't want to just go into a sales call and not have a purpose,
Right.
So I use the same thing even today. And my brother and he used to train at the training center as well, and we would have contests. Hey, what's your goal tonight? My goal is foot sweeps, and then whoever hit their goal, hey, you got to buy me ice cream, you got to buy me a beer, whatever it is, right? And we would have fun with it, because that's a big aspect too. Is you can't lose the fun piece. It's work and it's focus work, but you have to celebrate your victories, no
Yeah.
matter how big or small.
And also the other thing is, and this is something that someone told me once, when you go to Randar, you really cannot be afraid of getting thrown, because if you are all defensive all the time, you are not able to execute what you're not able to attack, because you are
Yep.
so stiff and defensive that you're not able to attack, right?
Oh, 100%. And actually, the 2007 Pan Am Games, my first two rounds, after I pulled off, Eddie Liddy, my coach, pulled me off and said, "Hey man, what's going on? You look a little stiff, And I told him, I'm like, "Well, this is a huge tournament and a lot of pressure." And he was like he basically his message to me was, "You look like you're fighting not to lose, right?
Oh
You don't."
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah, and that's what it was. And then my next three rounds were a lot better, because I was like, "Yeah, you're right, man. If I lose, I lose, but I'd rather fight my match." And same with Randori. It does you no good to not get thrown for a round, because anybody can stiff arm and anybody can defend and not get thrown by somebody. But are you really doing judo? Are you really improving?
Yeah.
And getting something out of that round, because in the end of it, in a quad, you only have so many rounds and so much time to improve,
And Randori usually is the time that you have that you can take risk, right? Because it's training, so you
Yes.
can risk more.
That and fighting as many tournaments as possible, as after an athlete, I became a coach, and that was my biggest struggle, was getting my athletes to go to any tournament. There's a local one in, right down the road, fight, and a lot of them were same idea. I don't want to lose. People laugh if I lose at a local tournament. I was like, man, it doesn't matter. It's not a sprint, right? We're looking at a marathon. We're looking for this extended period, the end goal, not today's goal.
And how did you ever had problems with nerves, getting nerves and like freeze during the match? And how do you handle that?
Yep, I never really froze during a match, but I was always nervous, and I like that, because I think if you're nervous, um, it means you're present, right? I think once you lose the nerves, maybe because you're too good, or you've had too many winning streaks, or whatever it is, then I don't think you're focused on the match, right? I think being nervous is a good thing, because it makes you plan. It makes you well, let me back up. The only time I've ever been nervous that I didn't like it is when I didn't prepare. because
Oh,
it
okay.
happens. It does happen. Whether it's weight cut, I waited till last minute and I had to cut 20 pounds.
Ooh, yeah,
I know I'm not at my optimal. I know I can beat this guy, but I didn't do what I was supposed to do to prepare.
yeah.
So that's when nerves are bad. I think any other time, man, I welcome them because it kind of heightens your senses and helps you prepare.
Yeah, and you mentioned a good point about awareness. It's just when you are, I think that when you are nervous, you are more aware of the movements, you are more alert. If you are too relaxed, sometimes you don't see things coming.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Now there is a sweet spot to be. You don't want to be nervous to the point that you freeze and you forget things, right? Because that's too much.
Yeah, and it goes back to that point. I mean, different people, right, have different reactions. But I think that usually happens when you know that you didn't do something to prepare. That's when you really are that nervous where you freeze because if not, man, um,
So
I mean,
even your athletes as a coach, you never seen an athlete of yours like very nervous to the point that he was just not able to execute.
we have, and then I think in order to kind of remedy that, I mean, our big thing and my big thing when I was an athlete and into coaching was you're going to be prepared for everything, right? So I'm going to put you in positions that you don't want to be in practice. Okay, now you're behind by Wazari, 10 seconds left, go.
Hmm.
You have this grip that you don't like, you're being bent over, go. That way I want to make sure I cover all the bases so that you don't get in a position in a match that we haven't been in. You shouldn't be nervous because we've been there 100 times.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. So that's why, as you said, it's important also to compete a lot because
Yep.
it seems like as more you compete and you are exposed to that pressure situation, it gets a little better over time.
It does, and you don't get as nervous, right? I mean, if you're only competing twice a year and you have to win, man, that's tough. But if
Yeah.
I'm competing every weekend, then you know what? It's like you're walking down the street. I don't even have to think about left, right with my feet. I do it every day,
Hmm.
and it's something normal to me.
It's like you, if you just do one sales call a month,
Yep. Yeah.
you are all nervous because you have to close that deal.
Exactly, right? And you don't know what to say because you haven't practiced it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's good, but and this is something that I think Jimmy also mentioned that people say that gets better over time, but you always have that nervous feeling, even if you are extremely experienced. And this is, as you said, is important to have that.
It is, and your goals get bigger. If you're doing it right.
Hmm.
So it's something new. Because now it's like, okay, I'm on the national team, and now I'm at the Pan Am Games, and I'm at the World Championships, and so there's always those new experiences that you have in different countries, and or hey, you know what? I'm injured, and now I got to fight, or I'm sick. I mean, there's always something that comes up, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's important to train like
Were
that too.
you pretty healthy throughout your athlete career from the injury perspective, or you had some major problems?
No, I was pretty healthy, man. Biggest thing, I used to get tumors every once in a while, so I had some small things like that.
But never fracture, never anything with a shoulder or a knee, or no major injury at all.
No, no major injuries. That 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 really sidelined me. A couple high ankle sprains, random stuff like that. My back. I mean, I had stuff like everyday people, but nothing that took me out for an extended period of time.
So, what is the secret to stay healthy doing judo? Because I mean, most of the people that I know are somehow broke at some point.
Yeah, well, I think I got lucky. I grew up playing soccer. Um, so for me, I know our biggest injury in judo, at least everybody I know, are knees.
Hmm.
ACLs, MCLs, all that stuff. So I think growing up playing soccer kind of helped me out, and I was pretty limber too um, as far as my knees and stuff like that. So I think that helped me out quite a bit. And then also, having a good coach and that can read you as an athlete is big as well, because you definitely need to train injured to a certain degree so that if that happens, you're prepared. But you can overtrain, and you can push yourself to where you can't compete. And I think that's important too, is having somebody there that can say, hey, get on the mat when you don't want to, or vice versa. If you're pushing through something and they can see that you're going to get injured, they can say, hey, man, hold back. We're going to skip this tournament because these other 5 are more important.
Your routine were 5 days a week training, or more than that?
Um, we were doing pretty much 5 days a week judo. Um, we did a split cardio and weight training, 2 days a week of cardio. Well, pretty much 2 days a week of weight training, and then we always trying to do some active recovery, if that's what you want to call it.
Hmm.
But let's go play basketball. Let's go do the incline in Colorado Springs. Let's go do something fun that's still active,
Yeah.
um, as well.
And you were lightweight during your whole career, right?
I was a small kid growing up, but when I hit the senior, I was 60 kilos for 1 year, did 2 tournaments at 66, and then pretty much the rest at 73.
Oh, so you were the same division as Nico Del Popolo, 73.
I was, yep, yep. And I might have gone up to 81, but my brother was 81 kilos, and we were both trying to make a run. So that's really what kept me down at 73, which probably is where I should have been anyway.
Yeah, because you probably didn't have problems cutting weight, did you?
Not if I did it right. It took me a little bit, like everybody else. I think that's young, to pay attention, and you know what, to understand that cutting 20 pounds that week is not a good thing. And why do all this work and spend all this money and time to to handicap yourself like that by cutting weight properly. So as became an older athlete, I was a lot better at it for sure.
Yeah. And how many years did you practice judo, Ryan? I mean, when did you start? Early on?
Yep, I started when I was 5, so I started in '85, um, and then we moved to Texas around that time as well. So 8 years old, and then since then I've been going strong.
And when did you believe you would be able to go to the Olympics? You always have that goal, or it was something that was getting more mature as you start to winning more tournaments, and you were like, you know what, I can do this.
Yeah, to be honest, man, I'd love to say that I've been wanting to be an Olympian since I was a little kid, but um, I didn't. I mean, and I did not want to. I just didn't have that exposure to it, and I just enjoyed, mixing it up with people and going to tournaments with my family. I was lucky enough to. We lived in Texas and we drove everywhere, man. We went to Oklahoma and Louisiana, and it was an adventure every weekend, So that was fun for us, and we were pretty good at it, my brother and sister and I, and I was lucky to have my mom and dad as a support system to do that. And then I just saw it as something where I could go see the world, go see different opportunities, and then get a fight. And then I think once I met my brother, went up to the Olympic Training Center in '96, and we came up to visit, and I met Eddie, and I saw the training center. I think that's when I really, I was 16, and I really kind of said, hey, you know what, this would be a path I'd like to go on. And I was able to start traveling to Europe and different places as a junior, and it was fun, man. I loved it.
Why you think that the level of judo in Europe is so high? I mean, they have so many good judo players.
They do, and I think it's the proximity for them. Um, and they also send their juniors to a lot of the higher level tournaments, even though they know that most of them are probably going to get, or not going to have a great result, but they're going to have that exposure, and then they get to go to the camps with Ono and all these guys that are just monsters, and the people who do stick with it and make it are going to be that much better. So I think it's just the
Yeah.
exposure and being able to hit those high level tournaments and camps week after week after week. And let's be honest, man, I love the U.S., but a lot of our former athletes, and I'll even throw myself in there included, don't stick around to coach.
Yeah.
So we have all these talented people that aren't giving back, not giving back. I mean, we all try to give back what we can, but aren't giving the exposure that they can to these up and coming kids.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a valid point. Now, for what's your advice for someone like me? I'm 46 and I started judo 2 years ago with 44.
Yep.
Uh, Judo after 40s, is this something feasible? Is this something that you believe it can be done? Of course, I mean, not talking about Olympics or anything, but just to
Yeah.
improve, become a black belt and be competitive, do some local tournaments and things like that. What do you think about judo after 40s?
If you would ask me this pre-retirement, I would have probably laughed. And I know that's something bad to say, but I remember, going to tournaments and going, man, I will never fight masters, and I don't know why I had that thought, because now, like, I can't quit. I love it, and I, like you said, I fought the um, fight to win that they recently had, that had
Hmm.
the different rules, and it's just ingrained in your system. But for someone that's never done it, it's a wonderful, wonderful sport. The hardest part, I think, is just learning how to fall,
Yeah,
and that's why we lose, I think, a lot of people to Brazilian jiu-jitsu and different martial arts or different sports, because it is a little hard on your body.
yeah.
Um, but as long as you have a good dojo, good partners, good coaches, it's a fantastic way to keep in shape. It's a fantastic way to learn self-defense. Yeah, I think more people should get into it for sure.
Yeah, it is
Post,
interesting because I actually started judo because I was doing jiu-jitsu first, and I was having hard time on the takedowns. And we go IBJJF, 2 points on the takedown, right? So I won my 2 points. I won my 2 points. I don't want to pull guard, and I was like, I need to learn how to take down, and that's when I joined judo, because I really wanted to learn how to do the takedown, and then I fell in love. It's just so beautiful, and honestly, I think it's harder than jiu-jitsu because the learning curve is way harder for you to dominate something. Jeez, it takes a lot of work.
I agree 100%. And it's boring at first, right?
Because it's the
And
repetition, right?
it's repetition, and it's learning how to fall, and it's safety. But and that's why I think a lot of people move away, is because they don't spend enough time. And I know we have limited time. We're 40, right? I want to get into it. I want to I want to learn. I want to get to throwing people and learn the cool stuff I see on YouTube and write different things. But a little bit on the basics, man. If people can spend more time learning how to fall, taking care of your partners, and understanding that, hey, we don't got to go full force, right? It's
Hmm.
not a strength. Judo's not a strength game. It's a technique. It's like chess. It's a very finesse game, and if we can all kind of learn I mean, that's the basics of judo, right? It's mutual benefit and welfare, and taking care of your partner, and we're both on the same journey. But spending a little bit of time on the boring stuff is going to help you out,
Yeah.
on the cool stuff.
And you said something that is extremely valid. It's not only about force and strength. Technique is so important. Now,
Yep.
the problem is many times you see guys that they don't have good technique, so they really go full strength, right? And
Yes,
that's usually when accident happens.
it does. It does. And I think growing up doing judo, it's hard to teach that to people or explain that to people. But I got to be honest, man. Doing sales, I play golf,
Mm.
and it's the same thing when I'm golfing and I'm with a good golfer. They're like, "What are you doing?" You're trying to crush the ball, and I'm like, "That's all I can do." And that's what people tell me with judo. Like, "Hey, man, let's work on your technique." Well, if I can't get it, I push it. So I get it now.
Yeah, yeah, but that's why choosing right partners can also help your longevity because you're not gonna get injury. You can train more, be
Yep.
more on the safe side. Because when I train with my sensei, she can basically throw me with minimal effort because her technique is so good that I feel like a toy. But
But you make a good point. It's not only your training partners, but your coaches
mhm,
and your dojos, right?
yeah,
Because just like any MMA or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, judo, I don't care what martial arts you're in, if you go to a dojo that's more built on like a fight atmosphere, it's going to be tougher to learn that type of stuff. Um, and guys over 40, like we have a job.
hmm,
I can't go to my job with a black eye,
yeah.
and a broken shoulder, so that is just as important is to find a great place with people with the same mindset of, hey, we're all professionals. We got to go to work tomorrow.
Mhm.
Let's take care of each other and let's learn.
Yeah, I really agree with that. The place that I train, you've been there. That's where we met. Eastside Dojo. They
Yep.
have a great atmosphere there. Everyone take care of each other. That's one of the reasons I moved there. I usually have to drive 45 minutes to get there, but it's extremely worth it. Just because of the atmosphere.
It is. That's a gem for sure.
Yeah. You still train regularly today, Ryan?
I try. I have a 5 and a 7 year old, so my priorities have shifted.
Hmm.
I would love to go to judo or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or something every day, but unfortunately, it's my time to do what my parents did for me.
Of course, yeah.
So
But do you
so
try? Do
now
you try to hit the gym at least like once a week or twice a week, something like that?
I do, yeah. So I have a treadmill behind me that we try to do some workouts at home, but yeah, we try to roll at least twice a week. We teach a judo class at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu place now. Luckily in Colorado Springs, a lot of the ex-judo guys have stayed, so we can get together and all do some judo, do some jiu-jitsu. But yeah, the plan is at least twice a week if I can.
No, that's great. And because I noticed when you were teaching that class and you were Randori, man, you were in good shape. I mean, you were throwing everyone there.
I still think I'm 21.
That's a good thing, right?
It is, yeah. You don't ever want to get old, man. So yeah, and that's the part I've never lost is I want to roll with everybody, because everybody has something to teach you, and it's fun. Even if I get thrown, I don't care. It's
Yeah,
fun.
that's the other thing, right? There are some black belts that they have a big ego and they just don't let people to throw them. And I think that's not beneficial because if you are a black belt and you are teaching, you really want your students to execute the movement on you. If you
Yep,
are not allowing that to happen, what's the point?
it is, and that's exactly right. And that's it has its place. I think when you're a competitive athlete, I get it. It's that mindset of don't ever give up, and 100% every time. But when you're a coach, when you're on the other side, it's not about you. It's not about how good of an athlete you are or were. It's about what you can make your students, right?
Hmm.
Yep.
You had experience before of coaches or other people that were teaching you that you felt that way that big ego.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And it's again, I was kind of taught you take whatever you can positive out of each round. So even when I knew those guys were there, I would just try to get something out of it. That way, it's not a round wasted.
Hmm. Yeah. One thing that since you started judo so early, you probably never felt that. But for someone that started late, like I did, sometimes is still hard. At least in the beginning, it was to differentiate between a good round or someone trying to murder you, right? Because it's like why he's coming to me like he's in a competition, right? So it took a little time for me to adjust and just understand that that's some people they only have one speed.
Yeah, and some people don't have that control. To him, he may not think he's going all out, but that may be his speed.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the hard part sometimes. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and it's hard, and I think that this is one of the reasons some people they quit is
Yep.
because they just got scared. I've seen some guys said, "No, man, I'm not gonna come back," because the guy tried to murder me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it takes some time for you to understand that it's not personal. It's just because that person has one speed and one speed only.
right. Well, and, jiu-jitsu now is my professor. His favorite saying is, "Hey, don't hurt your toys," right?
Yeah.
Because if I hurt my partner, guess what? Judo's it's an individual sport, but I can't train by myself.
Hmm.
So if I treat my partners like that, or on purpose or on accident, it's going to be a pretty tough road for you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. When you were talking about recovery, I know that you were pretty healthy throughout your career. After you retire and then you start doing those fight to win, of course, the prep for the fight to win was completely different than the ones for the Olympics and everything because you were older. How was your mindset for the recovery, knowing that this was not your job and you have your own job now, you have your obligations and everything? How did you take this whole thing?
It was tough. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The training wasn't there. Actually, I took my first fight to win on a month's notice, not fighting in probably 4 years.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, and I had to cut about, I don't know, 20, 25 pounds. But, it was actually the first fight to win judo match ever. And he said, "Yeah, I'd love you to be a part of it, Seth." I grew up with him in Dallas and Texas. And so he said, "Yeah, man, we're going to do it in Denver. I'd love you to be a part of it. It's in, whatever, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or 4 to 6 weeks." So I was like, "Well, let's do it,"
Yeah.
not knowing what I was getting into. And, but you're absolutely right. It did make me realize that I didn't do as much of that as I should have when I was an athlete.
Hmm.
As far as, hey, getting massages and taking care of your body and different things, I just did it, pushed through it and did it right, and made it work. And you can't do that as a 40-year-old trying to make a comeback. So that was key, was not as much of the judo or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or whatever my training was. It was a ton of cardio and a ton of stretching, recovery.
Were you
Making
were
sure.
you doing Randori every day when you were prepping or not really?
I was trying to, but it was with more of Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys because our judo wasn't really happening at the moment.
Hmm.
So I called up a few favors and had some guys show up twice a week, and I got 2 or 3 rounds in. Um, but I was almost relying on the fact that I've done it for so long that, hey, I can get gripping and I can get Uchikomis, but it's gonna come back, kind of like riding a bike.
And it did come back, right?
It did, and I was kind of lucky. I mean, the first fight to win was a very talented guy, but he was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and ex-judo, well, not ex, but a judo black belt as well, um, but with more focus on the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I kind of had a leg up on that side, at least with the judo aspect.
Right.
Um, so, kind of helped out a bit.
And the rules are two ippons to win, right?
They are old school rules, which I love because that's, I'm a fireman's and Teguruma and leg grabs. But yeah, two ippons to win, 30 seconds on the ground unless you have a submission on, and one submission wins as well.
And
So
how did you win that one? Two ippons?
yeah, two firemen's. But it was a battle, man. I mean, the guy I fought was still fighting in Bellator. He owns his own gym in Arizona. He was a lot bigger than I was. So it was a battle, man. We had a fun time. He put up a good match. We both did. We went off the stage a few times. I mean, it was something that I'd never experienced before because judo's kind of that, there's no music.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a Saturday morning, and all of a sudden we're on the stage with music and lights and sounds, and it hooked me.
Yeah,
I
you
loved it.
probably were really pumped.
Yeah.
And how long was the fight? 7 minutes?
It was 7 minutes. Yep.
But since it was two ippon, probably was less than that, right?
Yeah, it was probably about 5 minutes. It took me a little bit to kind of the same thing we were talking about, fight not to lose.
You were stiff,
You know,
stiff at the beginning, and then until you lose
yeah,
up. Yeah.
yeah. Brian Olson was there. He was coaching me along with Eddie, and Brian said the same. About 2 minutes in, he's like, "Dude, it's just Randori. just have fun. It's not the Olympics. You're right. Remember, you're here to have fun." And I was like, "Oh yeah." So
That's awesome, man. It's good. It's good. I mean, I bet you that you felt super alive.
I did something I hadn't felt in a long time, and it brought that back, and that's why I'm super thankful for Seth and for that whole organization because it's bringing that aspect of judo back, and especially with no rules because now more guys are willing to come back post retirement to go, go roll again.
Yeah, no, I noticed that when you were teaching in our dojo, you were very passionate. So make sure you keep that, man, because I think that we need people like you, passionate about with the experience. Keep giving back. Keep, finding time to educate others on the art because it's a beautiful art, and you have a very unique experience. It's not everyone that went to the Olympics. It's not everyone that had that level of exposure. So make sure to use that.
Oh, for sure. That's something I'll never lose. One of these days I'm going to hit the lottery. That's all I'm going to do. In the meantime, I got to pay some bills. But yeah, man, I still travel all over doing clinics, and that's my favorite part. Is just meeting people and helping. And I mean, that's how I got to where I was.
Yeah.
Is people giving their time.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, thank you very much for your time, taking the time on this Saturday to talk about the beautiful art of judo and your amazing career. So I truly appreciate.
No, and I appreciate it as well, man, and I appreciate what you do because this is the questions you're asking, the answers you're getting, the people you're talking to. It's going to help a lot of people, because like I said, there's not a lot of education or exposure on this type of stuff. So I think a lot of the young, old, any athletes, anybody can gain a lot from it. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely, my friend. So thank you very much. Stay in touch, and good luck on your career. And I hope you win that lottery so you can dedicate your judo.
I'll share it with you, buddy.
All right, friend. Thank you, everyone, for joining the Overcome podcast. See you again next time.